I think the biggest question where there needs to be more research and more information is with soil quality and soil health. I think most farmers are aware of the benefits that any kind of residue management, no-till, strip-till can have as far as reducing the amount of time, reducing your labor, reducing your fuel costs. All of that becomes obvious pretty quick. I think most people are aware of the benefits as far as reducing soil erosion. But I think there's still a lot of information that needs to be passed on to farmers regarding the benefits that it can have towards soil quality and soil health. And really, I think there's still a lot of research to be done on that. We talk about soil quality or soil health, and when those phrases are used, really what is normally being referred to is trying to improve the amount of organic matter you have in your soil. By increasing the soil's organic matter content, you have the opportunity to improve your cation exchange capacity, your nutrient holding capacity, your water holding capacity. All of these are characteristics of the soil that are very important to having good crop production. In other words, we're trying to develop a soil that's going to hold moisture better, that's going to hold nutrients better, and those two factors alone obviously are very important to good crop production. As far as the effect the organic matter content is going to have on the appearance of the soil to the naked eye, it will tend to be a little darker with a lot of soils, but at the same time, you don't always notice that much difference as far as the appearance to the naked eye. When you're running soil tests, one of the characteristics of the soil that's going to be tested is the organic matter content. And over a period of time, if you're doing a better job of managing your residue, you will see that organic matter content slowly go up. And that's the best indicator right there. Again, to the naked eye, you can see some differences, a slightly darker color within the first 2 inches of the surface, but the bottom line is, what are the actual soil tests showing? And if they're showing an increase, that's going to give you the opportunity to improve your cation exchange capacity, your nutrient holding capacity, your water holding capacity, and hopefully your potential for having better crop yields. Farmers have all subsoiled in the coastal plain region in the past, or most all have. The reason being trying to avoid some of your restrictive zones or your hard pans that can develop in a lot of the coastal plain type soils. Some soils are more prone to that than others. Some of your better soils, your more productive soils that are, some would say Class 1 soils, aren't quite as likely to have problems with hard pans as some of your more sandy soils. And I think you are seeing some farmers in certain areas now that are experimenting with strictly a no-till system, where they're not subsoiling every year. And again, this is on some of your better soils, and they're having some success with it. One thing that is very important if a farmer is going to switch to a no-till system is that they really manage their traffic, that they keep their traffic, their tires, their rows in the same spot in the field every year. Another factor is going to be what crops are you growing in your system. There are some crops that it's very easy to have in a no-till system. Others, such as peanuts, it's going to complicate things a lot due to the way peanuts are harvested or due to the way they need to be planted. It's going to be difficult to have strictly a no-till system with some crops. With others, it would be easier. One thing I will mention is there's a lot of conflicting research on how important subsoiling is in some of your coastal plain soils. You can look at 3 or 4 different pieces of research and see different results as far as how much benefit you receive from subsoiling versus just a no-till system. And again, it's going to vary on different soil types. So I think the jury's still out to some extent on whether or not a continuous no-till system without any subsoiling will work on all of your coastal plain soils. I think there is evidence that on some soil types, as long as you really do a good job of managing your traffic, that you can switch to a no-till system and be successful with it. Jeff's a better one to talk with on than I am on that, because he's experimented with it some himself. With herbicide usage, it's important that you apply them according to the label, according to the manufacturer's recommendations. You want to use the correct rate. Your timing is very important. There's a window of opportunity there when you're spraying weeds. Let's say you've got a particular weed that needs to be sprayed before it's 4 inches in height, or before it reaches the 4-leaf stage. You've got to make sure you spray it within that time frame. If you wait too long, your control's not going to be what it needs to be, and basically you're throwing away money. Number one, you're wasting money on the herbicide, and number two, you're going to lose money long term on your yield, because those weeds are going to continue to grow and they're going to compete with your crop. So it's important that you, again, follow the label recommendations. That means using the proper rate of the herbicide. That means spraying the weed at the proper growth stage. It's important that you don't spray any weeds when they're under stress, heat or drought stress. Herbicides aren't going to be nearly as effective when the weed is under stress. It's when it's growing normally. It's important that your equipment be calibrated properly. You know, you really can't afford to make mistakes when you're applying your herbicides. You got to get it right, because herbicides are costly, and it's also very costly when you continue to have weed problems in your field, and it impacts your yield. That's the bottom line. You're trying to maximize your yield, you're trying to minimize your cost, and you've got to have a good herbicide program in order to do that. This is a fairly typical field that you'll find in the coastal plain region of South Carolina. It was planted to soybeans last year. As you can see, looking out at the field, the land has some slope to it, and there is potential for soil erosion in a field like this. But what we have here is a good cover of residue from the soybean crop, and you also see some winter annuals starting to emerge that provide additional cover. In a field like this, you shouldn't have any problems with soil erosion during the winter. You shouldn't have any real runoff problems. As you move on into the spring, normally there's going to be adequate residue in a soybean field like this to prevent any erosion, to prevent any erosion from water or erosion from wind. Particularly if you're strip till planting or no-till planting, using a strip till rig that's not going to till a strip more than, say, 12 inches or so wide, you should have adequate cover here to avoid any erosion problems. Where a cover crop can help you in a field like this is if you're really trying to do everything you can to maximize the amount of residue you have, so that you can improve your soil quality, so that you can increase the amount of organic matter you have in the soil. That's where the cover crop can come into play in a field like this. Particularly, again, we're looking at soybean residue here. With soybeans and cotton, you get a moderate amount of residue, but not the kind of residue you're going to get following a crop like corn. So you can have some benefit to a cover crop here. Certainly behind a crop like peanuts, where there's a limited amount of residue, a cover crop can offer some benefits as well. I think the bottom line with cover crops is, number one, what are your field conditions? You know, how much slope do you have? How much potential do you have for erosion? In a lot of situations, just the residue from last year's crop is adequate to prevent any erosion problems. On the other hand, if your objective is to really improve your soil quality significantly, if you're really trying to do everything you can to increase the amount of organic matter you have in the soil, that's where the cover crop can help.